Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we will learn how to simplify these type of expressions. Okay, so we'll just start with our question number 1. In our question number 1, we have 3 plus root 3, and then we have 2 plus root 2. So the way to simplify this is very simple, okay, and it's pretty easy. So the first step or the first thing that you do when you try to multiply these things is first you multiply this entire 2 plus root 2 by this 3, and then again you multiply this 2 plus root 2 by our plus root 3. Okay, so first let's just write our 3, and then we write this 2 plus root 2 over here like this. Okay, so it's still in the bracket, and we are going to multiply this 3 and this 2 plus root 2 in our next step. But for now we are just writing we have to multiply this 3 and 2 plus root 2, and then we have our plus root 3, and again we have to multiply this 2 plus root 2 with our root 3, right? So let's just copy that. So we have 2 plus root 2. Now we just multiply these 2 plus root 2 with our 3. Okay, so we have, when we multiply these numbers, we have to multiply this 2 by our 3, and we also have to multiply this root 2 by our 3. Now what we are going to get here is 3 times 2 is 6, plus 3 times root 2 is 3 root 2. Okay, again we have our plus over here, and then we have our root 3, and then we have our 2. Now again what we have to do is we have to multiply this 2 with our root 3, and we also have to multiply this root 2 by our root 3. Now what we are going to get is, when we multiply this root 3 and 2, is 2 root 3, and then when we multiply this root 3 and root 2, we have plus becomes plus, and root 3 times root 2 is going to be root 3 into 2. Okay, now what is happening over here is, if we have something like, let's say, root a times a root b, then what we can do is we can put both a and b inside the same square root, okay, and write it as a times b. So that's what we are doing over here. So we have root 3 times root 2, both have square root, so we are writing both 3 and 2 inside the same square root. Okay, now we have our 6, right? We can just write that as it is, plus we have 3 root 2 plus 2 root 3, and then we have our root 3 times root 2 is root 6, and that's it. That's our answer. Now let's do question number 2, okay, the second question. So in our second question we have something like 3 plus root 3, and then we have 3 minus root 3. Now this looks something like a plus b and a minus b, and we know that the formula for a plus b and a minus b is a square minus b square. In our particular case, our a is 3, right? We have 3, and our b is root 3. Okay, so we have our b as root 3. So we have a plus b and a minus b. Now what we are going to do is we are going to use this formula a plus b, a minus b is a square minus b square to simplify this expression. Now what are we going to get when we use that particular formula? We are going to get our a square is going to be 3 square, and then we have our minus in the formula, and our b square is going to be root 3 whole square. Okay, so we have our b as root 3, and that's why our b square is going to be root 3 whole square. In our next step we have 3 square is 9, minus root 3 square is actually 3, okay? So the way you can look at it is, we can just cut the square root and square and we get 3. Or the other way you can look at it is, if we have root 3 whole square, this is root 3 times root 3. And root 3 times root 3 is, again, we just discussed about this, right? We can put both of them in the same bracket. So we have 3 times 3, right? And this is going to be square root 3 times 3 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3, right? So root 3 times root 3 is 3. Or root 3 whole square is also 3. In the same way, if you had something like root a times root a, it's going to be a, okay? So if you multiply two square root, and inside the square root, if you have the same numbers, then the square root just disappears, okay? So similarly, if you had something like root 5 times root 5, it would just be 5. So that's the logic behind this. And now we have our 9 minus 3, right? 9 minus 3 is 6. And that's our answer. So that's our second question. Now let's move to our third question. Our third question was root 5 plus root 2 whole square, right? So let's copy the question first. So we have a root 5 plus a root 2 whole square. To solve this particular question, again, we need to know one particular formula. And that formula is, we need to know the formula of a plus b whole square, okay? This looks something like a plus b whole square. The formula of a plus b whole square is a square plus b square plus 2ab. Some people also write it as a square plus 2ab plus b square. Both of them are correct, okay? We are just putting the 2ab in front and b square in the back, and it's the same thing. Now, what we are going to do is, we are going to use this formula to simplify this expression. So we have our a over here as root 5 and our b as root 2. So our a square plus b square plus 2ab is going to be, our a square is going to be root 5 whole square, right? Our a is root 5. And then plus, we have our plus over here, right? Our b square is going to be, our b is root 2. So it's going to be root 2 whole square plus, and then we have our 2ab, right? Our 2ab is going to be 2 times our a is root 5, our b is root 2, right? Let's just write that down. And then we have, again, we just discussed this before, root 5 whole square is going to be just 5, right? Similarly, root 2 whole square is going to be 2, plus we have our 2 over here, and we can put both this 5 and 2 inside the same square root, and we will have 5 times 2 over here, right? And we have our 5 plus 2 is 7, plus we have 2, and then square root of 5 times 2 is square root of 10, right? 5 times 2 is 10. And that's it. We are done, okay? We can't add these numbers, okay? If it was a pure number like 2, we could have added them, but since there is a radical sign, we can't add them. The only time when we can add these type of numbers is if they have same radical signs and same numbers inside the radical sign. For example, if we had a 7 root 10 plus 2 root 10, then we have our same radical sign square root and 10. In that case, we can add these two, okay, and we would get 7 plus 2 is 9 root 10. The way this works is, you can take root 10 common over here, and we would get 7 plus 2, right? And 7 plus 2 is 9. So we get 9 root 10, okay? In those cases only, you can add them. Otherwise, you don't add them, you can't add them, and this is going to be your answer, okay? So that's our third question. Now, let's look at our final question. So our final question was root 5 minus root 2 and root 5 plus root 2. Okay, let's copy the question first. So we had root 5 minus root 2, and then we have root 5 plus root 2. Again, this looks somewhat similar to our second question, right? Again, we have something like a plus b and a minus b. Now, what was the formula of a plus b and a minus b? We just did that before. It is a square minus b square, right? So we're just going to use this formula, okay? So we have our a as our root 5 and our b as root 2, okay? So we have a minus b, and then we have a plus b, okay? It's the same thing, a plus b, a minus b, or a minus b, a plus b, okay? You can write it both ways, okay? So a minus b, a plus b is the same thing as a plus b, a minus b, okay? It's something like 3 times 2 is equal to 2 times 3, okay? It's just a product, so you can change the position of these things, okay? And you would still get a square minus b square. Now, so in our question again, we again have something like a minus b, a plus b, or a plus b, a minus b. Now, the formula of a minus b, a plus b is a square minus b square, right? So our a square is going to be root 5 whole square, right? Our a is root 5, minus our b square is going to be root 2 whole square. And we just discussed this before. Root 5 square is just 5, and root 2 square is just 2. So 5 minus 2 is 3, and done, right? This question is also solved. Our last question is actually the easiest one. If you had any confusions while watching this video, please let us know in the comments. Thank you.